Let's get you now a big voice from the corporate sector. We've got Vinita Bali, who's Chief Executive Officer at Britannia Industries Limited, joining us now on the show from Bangalore. Vinita, thanks very much for joining us on the show. To begin with, now, one big focus that everyone really has is food inflation holding up at worrying levels. Are you in any manner seeing that hurt demand for your products? Have you seen a slowdown in demand for your products?
I think what we are seeing as the impact of food inflation certainly is a relative slowing down in the rate of growth. So the market for our products still continues to increase, but the increases are not at the level of 16 to 18% that we were used to, but in significantly lower double digits. I think there's another way of looking at it, and that is that we operate in a category which is fairly pervasive, which is a habitual purchase, especially when you think of products like bread and milk and biscuits. But what happens with a generally high food inflation is that it puts pressure on overall discretionary spends, and that in turn impacts consumption even more.
Ms. Bali, afternoon. Just wanted to talk about your consumption volumes. How do you expect that to pan out in each of your product categories, also on account of the increased competition?
You know, I've never given any forward-looking forecasts, and I'm not about to give one right now. I can certainly talk about what we have done and what we have delivered, and I'd be happy to talk at the end of the first quarter what we've done in the first quarter. For now, suffice to say that we ended last year with a top-line growth of about 18%, supported by a volume growth of between 7 and 8%, and the balance 10% coming from pricing as well as mix.
Right, you did mention a little earlier that you aren't seeing the 16 to 18% levels, but you've seen a significant decline to double-digit levels. Could you quantify that in terms of growth, that is?
I mentioned earlier, and I want to clarify once again so that there is no ambiguity in understanding. When I was talking about market growth earlier of 16 to 18% and a relatively a relative decline in that rate of growth to 10 to 12%, I'm talking about the entire market. I'm not talking about Britannia.
Fair enough. Ms. Bali, could you run us through how the weakness in the rupee has impacted you? On account of the rupee plunging, are you looking at hiking product prices?
Well, the impact of the rupee works in two ways for us. One is that a large part of our inputs are not directly impacted by the rupee, because a lot of that is domestic purchase and consumption. So whether it's wheat or sugar or milk powder or things like that. The one thing that impacts us significantly, actually there are two things that impact us significantly. One is the price of refined palm oil, which is imported and which is pegged to a dollar price. The second thing indirectly that impacts us is the price of fuel, because that is part of the energy we use in our manufacturing units, as well as the impact that fuel prices have on the prices of laminates. So I think overall what we are seeing this year is a far more moderate rate of inflation when it comes to things like wheat flour, certainly. Sugar is up about 7 to 8%. Milk is fairly moderate as well. But in these other items like refined palm oil, fuel, which is again another input for us, as well as some of the laminates, which are dependent on the price of polymers that go into those laminates, those have been indirectly impacted.
Right now, Vinita, the monsoons so far have been below average. There is concern that the monsoons in the remainder of the monsoon season could again remain below average. What does this do to the overall sector, and what impact is it expected to have on Britannia in particular?
I think there are 2 or 3 implications of the monsoons. One is directly related to how much money, therefore, will be available in rural India as far as consumption spending is concerned. I think the other impact of the monsoons is what is going to be the likely effect on crops such as sugarcane, which are due for harvesting October onwards. And that would then determine what the prices of sugar will be in the market and so on. So I think there is a direct impact and certainly there is an indirect impact. As far as Britannia is concerned, certainly we sell most of our products in rural as well as in urban India. And depending on the brand, in fact, at times 50% of our consumption comes from rural India. So it is a concern. It is something which we take as a challenge. It is something that we are going to address in terms of our marketing and sales plans. But at the end of the day, I think the overall increase in disposable income as well as consumer sentiment determines to a large extent purchase and consumption, not just of products that we sell and market, but of anything that consumers buy.
I just wanted a clarification on the recent news that had come in that the company was investigating a supply chain corruption. There was news that a few employees were also fired on account of the same. Could you just elaborate and give us an update on the same?
Frankly, there's nothing to elaborate. What you're saying is right. We were made aware, or we became aware of a violation of our Code of Business Conduct. We take that extremely seriously. We pride ourselves on operating with integrity and honesty at all times. The concerned employees were investigated. Several of them confessed to what they had been doing, and they have been suspended, and other legal formalities will follow.
Right, now just focusing on advertising spends at Britannia, in the last quarter, high ad spends actually ate into your margins. How do you see margins panning out in the period ahead?
I want to say two things. One is we look at advertising as an investment that we are making in our brands. As I have said many times before, we look at our business as the business of brands. Brands is what we sell to consumers, and therefore our investment in brands occurs both in the front end, which is through our advertising and sales promotion, as well as in the back end through creation of the relevant capacity and capability. To that extent, we created 2 new greenfield units in Orissa as well as in Bihar, which have come on stream. There is a third one which is in the pipeline. We have augmented capacity in several of our existing units. The support for our brands is really determined by the marketing programs we have. And we don't really look at it on the basis of a quarter because, advertising builds brands for the long term. In the last quarter of last year that you mentioned, we had several new product launches, and the increase in advertising was to support that. We also have a very significant year for one of our most iconic brands, which is Good Day. This is the 25th year since the inception of Good Day, and we created new advertising that went on air in the last quarter. And during the course of this year, you will be seeing other programs and activities to really celebrate with consumers who've rewarded Good Day with their purchase and trust and confidence. So our investment behind brands comes from a belief that we are in the business of brands, and brands is what connects us with consumers.
Right, and you spoke about additional products that you added to your offerings in the last quarter. Is that something we can expect going forward as well, that you will continue to add products as you go forward, or would you look at consolidating the current products that you have at hand?
Actually, I think it is going to be both. If you look at our record on innovations, we've brought in many, many innovations in our bakery portfolio, in our dairy portfolio, as well as the introduction of Britannia Healthy Starts, which is a range of breakfast foods which we are currently selling in Kerala and Tamil Nadu. So for us, innovations continue to play an important role. They are an integral part of our strategy. Anywhere between 10 to 15% of our volume in a year comes from products that we did not have in the year before. So those are completely innovative products. And by that, I mean, for example, last year, we introduced a range of healthy breads, which consisted of oats and honey. It consisted of whole wheat, and it consisted of multigrains to make breads. Each of these extends and expands the repertoire that we offer to consumers, and therefore extends and expands the consumption opportunities consumers have with our products. So that is a strategy that is going to continue. Whether we launch the same number of products we launched last year or no is to be seen. But certainly it's a question of consolidating what we already have, as well as bringing new taste experiences to the market.
And finally, Ms. Bali, we're planning to foray into North America as well as the UK. Could you give us the plans for those geographies, and are there any other geographies that you're looking at?
Actually, it's not planning to foray. We are already in North America. We've been exporting to North America for several years now. That is a market which is growing quite nicely for us. Those exports occur from India partially and from our business in the Middle East. So think of it this way. We sell Britannia products in about 30 different countries, which are sourced either from any of our factories in India or from our business in the Middle East. Outside of India, our largest business is in the Middle East, which is where we also have 2 factories. We have an office in Dubai. And from India as well as from the Middle East, we export to North America. We entered UK last year, and we're seeing some very good early traction for our products in the UK as well.